Why do topics like immigration matter to us? We're in the Magic Valley. We're in Twin Falls. I'm in Kimberly. We're so far away from what the federal government is doing with immigration. What can we possibly do? Well, if possession is 9/10 of the law, we're on the ground. We're the ones who are here taking care of the problems. We're the ones who will execute solutions here. We're the ones who will think of solutions. The issue, though, is that topics like immigration are so plagued by dishonesty. Frankly, that's the state of politics today. It's much easier to trick you and make something seem like something else than it is to actually convince you. That's the state of politics today. It's obscured by dishonest rhetoric. The words they use, they shift meanings in the middle of the argument to mean something else, and so that you think you're agreeing with one thing when you're actually agreeing with another. And it's very biased on both sides. I believe that we can, if we agree on, we understand the truth about these things, that we can come to some solutions that work for our county and for our state. But we can't do that if we're not clear and honest about the topic. And so that's what we're doing. We're looking at articles that are going to help us be clear and honest about the topic. And even if you don't care about the topic, these principles apply to any topic you can imagine. We need clarity. We need to understand the true problem in order to find solutions. Albert Einstein, I think, said, and probably Abraham Lincoln and a bunch of other guys said, if you give me 10 hours to solve a problem, what is it, 10 hours? 60 minutes to solve a problem, I'll spend 59 minutes defining it, and then I'll spend 1 minute solving the problem. And I found that to be true for difficult problems. And so let's do that. Let's apply that principle. Let's use liberal arts principles to ask questions about the truth about a topic, and then use reason and logic to understand what can we do to fix it. Let's go. All right, guys. Good morning. It's morning here in Kimberly, Idaho, and we're going over an article. Is the solution to America's immigration crisis hiding inside an Idaho dairy farm? I'm very interested in solutions. Very interested to find out what we need to be doing to make everything work. And to personally, I believe that it's important to take care of people. It's important for people to get along because we need each other. But I think to put a finer point on that, I think that what I'm concerned with is Twin Falls and the Magic Valley's ability to take care of each other. And one of the ways we do that is we decide what kind of culture we want to have. Is it cultures that clash, or is it um, more of a singular culture with a few different traditions that come from different places? Or, I mean, is it possible that you can have cultures just, with different values trying to make the same laws? All these questions need to be asked. And so what we're using is as a kind of to respond to, is the solution laid down? I assume will be laid down by this article. And so let's take a little look. We are, I think, I can't even remember uh, our progress. I think this is video number 3, maybe. We'll find out, but let's take a look. We're about halfway done with it. Okay. Um, in early August 2019, the Dairymen's Association Board of Directors gathered for dinner with Congressman Mike Simpson, a Republican representing the 2nd Congressional District of Idaho. The room was full of Republicans there to support their congressman. Immigration was high on the list of issues as Trump's ongoing demonization of immigrants and refugees provoked fear among dairy workers and dairy owners. So he, as I've mentioned, I think this article probably has a pretty, I don't know, not conservative, not traditionally American view of things. And I guess that's how I describe conservative is traditionally American, where you have, Christianity, where you have, there's a couple of different ways to think of conservatism. I think one of them is we just don't want things to change. Um, Another one is um, we hold to some values that should anchor us and that we can make arguments from. I think the second one probably makes more sense, right? The idea of not changing to me makes no sense. The I think we do have to change, but I think we have to hold on to values that anchor us and make sure that we remain human, doing things in the way God intended. Um, that doesn't mean you have to be necessarily. It doesn't mean all liberal arguments are wrong and all conservative arguments are right. That's what we're here to figure out. We want to. I think the way you do that is not by thinking in terms of party lines. The way you do that, because you have to believe that the reason for policies in any party is to serve that goal of human flourishing, I guess. And how do we know what human flourishing is? Well, you have to have a teleology, which means like kind of a goal, right? That's what I think that's what philosophers call that end goal that you're trying to accomplish. And so you have to be able to understand. You also have to have an epistemology, which means you have to be able to understand. Isn't that the one where that's how you know right from wrong? And if you don't understand how these things happen, you are simply being prejudicial. If you don't have a knowledge base that you're working from, a a self-evident truth that you're using logic on, you're simply exercising kind of a predetermined, just kind of how you feel. Oh, we're to this. We need to go this. What is that based on? And so Chesterton calls that dogma versus prejudice. He's like every moral feeling. I think I don't know how he'd say it. Every kind of moral feeling, I think, is what he means. Is either from dogma, which is some kind of truth, some kind of like code. You might say, from the Bible, from the Torah, from the Quran, or whatever. Um, and or it's just kind of a prejudice, kind of like, well, it seems like, right, or I feel that, and it's more of a direction or a vector rather than a kind of a goal or a teleology, because there's no clear goal when there's no clear standard. And so it's either dogma, which is the clear standard, right or wrong. And I think that's the problem sometimes with dogma, is it can be wrong, right? It's testable, it's vulnerable to testing, but it does put the ideas out there and make them known. Or it's a prejudice, which is a direction. It's not necessarily just isolated toward, oh, we're prejudiced against this skin color, right? Um, but it's just kind of like a general prejudice. Like I lean this way. I like strawberry ice cream, and therefore I think it should be the law. Okay, well, that would be a prejudice, right? Because you just like it. It's not like you're like yeah, it's right and wrong to believe in strawberry ice cream. It's just kind of your prejudice, right? And if your prejudice becomes law, then it's kind of like where are you getting this from? And I think that's why there are so many the big knock on atheists is that they believe right and wrong, but don't they believe in a right and a wrong, but can't ground it anywhere. So it's like, okay, so it's a prejudice then. It would be a dogma because there's nothing authoritative that tells us, unless you, and I'm going down a rabbit hole, because they would have to say unless you used some of them use evolution to say, well, we're meant to be this way because of evolution. And it's like, okay, it's a blind process without a goal. Oh, but it does have a goal, right? And so it's kind of like there's no creator that made it this way. I'm getting way in a rabbit trail. I'm thinking about starting this whole video over, but I won't. All right, so all right, so we're seeing that there. It's kind of like a okay. I think what he's doing is he's using a kind of like Trump bad, therefore he's making his case based on like Trump's demonization. I ran into this a lot in grad school. Um, okay, I already forgot what I read. A Republican, the room was full of Republicans there to support their congressman. Okay, so he's setting something up, right? He's trying to paint a picture where, okay, it's full of Republicans there to support their congressman. Um, there's a little nuance here that you may not have noticed, but some of these nuances it pays to notice, because if you don't notice them, they start to color how you think about things without you knowing it. And that's the danger. That's kind of what you need to look for. And that's why you should, that's why we want to read press from people we trust, people who share our values, because um, we're more likely to get true nuance rather than false nuance. Uh, and so and so the room was full of Republicans there to support their congressman. So it's kind of like, in a way, this is kind of like, I don't know if you were younger, and I remember my sister, when she was, so she'd be arguing with someone, she'd be recounting it, she'd be telling me about this argument she had with someone, and then she'd be like, and they said, well, she shouldn't have done, whatever, right? And so she gives that. This is the equivalent of doing that, right? We all kind of do that. We've just learned how to be more sophisticated about it and hide it a little bit. But we all, a lot of us do this, and it's not necessarily. I can't necessarily fault him, but we just have to know what's going on. They're to support their congressman, not support the legislation. They're to support their congressman, right? So it's different. Uh, you know, what if it said that um, a room of careful Republicans who have looked at the issues and really support the legislation? No, they're there to support their congressman, and that's why they're there. It's subtle, but it's important. We have to know how to read the news, folks, and know where the source is coming from, evaluate the source, and then say, okay, well, we know they're coming from this background. Now, to say that they're wrong because they come from a background that's different from ours, um, is the genetic fallacy. Well, to say that this argument is wrong because of what they believe in the background is the genetic fallacy. So then that's equivalent to saying, oh, they believe this because that, and therefore it's wrong, right? Implying that therefore it's wrong. That's not how we evaluate truth, right? He could be totally right about what's in this article and be totally wrong about his worldview. So immigration was high on the list of issues, as Trump's ongoing demonization of immigrants. So, and I don't know if this is fair. I don't know if Trump demonizes immigrants. And I think this is a bait and switch. I think he's equivocating on purpose. And I think, I don't know if it's on purpose. I see a lot of careful skill in this article. And so it's hard for me to believe that this is an accident. He's just, he doesn't mean to be speaking this way. Um, as far as I know, Trump is not against immigration. As far as I know, Trump is against illegal immigration and mass immigration that is not. Um, in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if since I think what we do is we oversimplify the point of view of the other side, and we're just like, oh, they just don't like families, right? If they're liberal, they just don't like families. Well, they probably do like families, and they just like abortion or whatever, right? I mean, in this case, what he's doing is he's like, oh, he's against illegal immigration, therefore he's against all immigration, and even the dairy industry. Trump's going to cause problems for the dairy industry because he's against all immigration or even all illegal immigration. And hey, what if? Call me crazy, but what if there's a place in the world for someone who is against illegal immigration and who plans to solve the problem of seasonal immigration that he's brought up earlier in the article, which is that the problem being that immigration is there are these work visas that are seasonal, and people are allowed to come up and work seasonally, but then they have to go home. Well, dairy is all year long, right? You have to milk the cows all the time, and so we need illegal immigration. Well, is that the only other option? Or could you actually solve the problem by just saying, hey, we need a different kind of visa that allows people to come up all year long? And we just have to vet them or something like that. But in that case, we're in control of it. I don't know, right? I don't know. Maybe there's a problem with that. I don't know. But I haven't heard that talked about. All I hear is if you're not in favor of illegal immigration, then you're against the dairy industry. And I'm just not sure about that. And I think I I don't know. Let's read on because I'm getting a little confused because I think that the Dairymen's Association should be asking this question already. This should have been a topic already, right? Um, all right. There were 50 to 60 people in the banquet room, most of them dairymen and their wives. So full of Republicans. And then dairymen and their wives. Um, and so he's saying dairymen and their wives because the dairymen in this article are the good guys. I would say they're the good guys. I mean, as far as I know, right? I'm in Idaho. I love dairy. Um, and their wives. So he's painting them as the good guys for sure, and because he's humanizing them by giving them families and wives. Simpson, as a longtime affable politician he is, worked the room with ease. So he's painting him as a slick politician. He said hello to the families he had gotten to know over the years and sat at a table toward the front of the room, off to the right. At a table at the far back corner of the room sat a group of Hispanic leadership Narabout had invited to attend. Okay. Um, he's painting a picture. What is he trying to prove here? What is he trying to show here? He's painting a very careful picture for us. Narabout called the room to order and, before introducing Simpson, asked each person to stand and introduce themselves. The stories were not limited to those of rural Idaho. Instead, dairymen took pains to speak of their immigrant heritage and what the administration's immigration rhetoric and policies were doing to the workforce they thought of as family. So I think this is where we join with the writer, where it's like, the writer of this article, because I think that there is something important about people. If we need workers, and we can get them from Mexico, and they can come up and be part of a family, right? To me, that means they share values. To me, that means they respect America. They respect what we were built on, and they are gonna become like us, right? In that way, hopefully, bring some delicious Mexican food with them and some cool traditions, right? But this sounds like they're joining our culture. I think that's great, right? If there's a way to do that in a way that doesn't like open the floodgates. And I don't think that's partisan. I don't think anybody's like, yeah, open the floodgates, just let anybody in because, we just want we want to destroy our culture because we want a bunch of people to overwhelm our culture and our systems and everything, right? I don't think anybody's asking that. If you are, let me know. I don't know. But he's painting this picture and I think I'm buying it, right? A little bit because I think this is a good, if true, this is great. And I think that's the question though. If true, how often does this happen? Is this the norm? And then can we make rules to where this works in our country, to where we're not playing favorites, we're not taking bribes. It's not a vague law, but it's a clear law. And I think that's really the reality of this issue is that it's hard to make clear laws in some of these situations, especially when people's feelings are involved. Remember, it's either dogma or rhetoric, according to Chesterton. And right now it feels like we have like, oh well, we're conservatives, so we like family, right? So let's paint this whole thing as, the illegal immigrants are family. Oh well, how can you be against family? But at the same time, as cynical as I am about that argument, right? Because I think it's overly simplistic, I'm still buying it because I think wouldn't that be great, right? I think that would be great. Can we bring people from a country where they have less and give them more and have them like join us and build our culture? That would be amazing. In fact, they could enrich our culture by bringing their culture, but then share our most fundamental important values of freedom and things like that. They could join it and enrich it potentially, right? Will the presence of representatives of Idaho's Hispanic immigrant community change the dynamics of the room? I'm not sure the dairymen would have said anything much different if that table in the back was empty. Their message had been clear for years. Before dinner was served, a dairyman rose to offer grace, prefaced with an acknowledgement that yesterday's story of the Dutch immigrant facing discrimination has been replaced by the story of the Latino immigrant who faces much of the same, if not worse. All right, again, he's not making the distinction between illegal and legal, right? Is the Dutch immigrant was that legal? Was that the country that you're coming in is supporting it? The country that you're coming in has let you in. And then people who are overstaying their visa or who I think that's part of the issue. I think do we want order or do we not want order? Do we want like, oh, well, we need to do this because, we need it, not because it's legal. Well, some laws are wrong. Just because a country doesn't let you in, just because the United States, these are illegal according to the United States, doesn't mean that that law is right. But you have to make that distinction when we're talking because you're talking about conservatives whose sole objection is that they're illegal and not controlled and flooding in. And so to represent it like, oh, it's just immigration. Why are we so against immigration? You're straw manning the argument. You're saying, oh, those people are just against immigration. Well, let's continue on. This is how it's done, y'all. This is how you tell a story like that. This is how you kind of manipulate the narrative, and it's not good because it represents, if we remember, dogma or bias, or dogma or prejudice, and what it represents is prejudice because it's a prejudice. It's a prejudice rather than tying it to an argument, tying it to a right and a wrong. And I think that's what we need to do is tie it to a right and a wrong and figure this out. All right. At such events, the congressman would usually sit at a table of top donors or key influencers. I assume the front and center table with dairy and corporate representation would be Simpson's perch. After the prayer, Narabout subtly guided Simpson to the table in the back corner. Congressman Simpson was going to dine with the leadership of the Idaho Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, among others in the Hispanic community. At a political reception by a white dairyman, Narabout wanted to make sure the Latino community knew they were in the room of allies and that they realized they're important to people like Mike Simpson, which they are. It also provided time for the congressman to ask questions and gather information that Narabout might not be able to provide. These Latino leaders would represent themselves and their community to the congressman. Okay, so it sounds like here's the big expectation and it's about to be dashed. Well, let's see. It was a dinner prefaced by years of work and persistence that restored hope. Over the course of the evening, old and new Idaho did more than share their stories. They shared their visions for a future where immigrants were valued and statements didn't incite hatred. From the lawmakers, the diverse room sought dialogue. Sought dialogue. Oh, compromise and unity. Okay, great. Um, I don't see anything wrong with this. except that I want to know, why is he not distinguishing between illegal and legal immigration? That's key to the story for any conservative. Um, I am new to the Deseret Times, and I assumed that there would be a more conservative leaning, but it doesn't seem to be, at least not in this article. Should we continue on and finish up in this video? I say no. We've been stopping at this line, so let's just go ahead and do that this time. Thanks for watching, guys. I think the whole point is that we're asking questions that lead us to truth, because without truth, it's just prejudice. Without truth, it's just our emotions that come from inside of us. And whenever you work with other people, you need something outside of you in order to reference, because I can't understand your emotions. I can't understand your biases. I can understand them to a point, but I can't own them. And if I'm supposed to conform to your biases, all I'm doing now is taking orders. It has to be something outside of us that we can all look at and we can all say, okay, yeah, that's justice and that's right. The conversation today is not like that. And if we're going to take care of our neighbors in the Magic Valley and in Twin Falls, we need to move from bias to truth, right? Bias to what they used to call dogma, which is now a dirty word, but it represents truth. And we need to move from bias to truth. And so that means we need to keep asking questions, asking good questions, and then we need to ask for help from our neighbors. As soon as we identify those problems by asking questions, now we go out and we ask who can help. And there are a lot of smart people in the Magic Valley who can help. All right, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time. I'm Chris Stadler, and I live in Kimberly, Idaho, and I'm here to ask for help. The news sucks. Nobody believes it. It gives us just enough information to be worried and helpless and dependent on politics for our salvation. But we live here, and possession is 9/10 of the law. We're responsible for our own problems, and we can fix them. It all starts with a kind of journalism that helps us understand the problem with the right information and insight. I'm not the solution, but I'm here to use my journalism background to ask good questions and ask for help. I'm Chris Stadler. This is the Magic Valley J School, and this series is Journalist Reacts. Guys, just a reminder that asking the dumb questions is the most important thing you can do in a world where everyone wants you to skip past the most important questions. They want you to think that if you ask the important questions, that you're naive and you should already know the answer because it's so simple. But the truth is, to get to the bottom of tough issues, you ask the dumb questions, the basic questions, the questions they don't want you to question. If you guys have questions, or if you guys have comments, I would love to hear them in the comments of this video. Or if you're seeing this in Facebook, in the comments in Facebook. And in the meantime, guys, keep asking the dumb questions.